So 40% of the European landmass is radioactive, and fancy just one accident by one stupid, ignorant man who is running the reactor, who was a hydroelectric specialist. He wasn't even a specialist in nuclear. Was doing an experiment. He didn't know what he was doing, and there was a huge bang, and he sent his 2 young men out, and he said, go and check, see what's happened. They came back and they said, it's gone. And he said, what's gone? And they said, the reactor's gone. He said, don't be ridiculous. Go and look again. Came back and they said, it's gone. And the control room filled with this very fine white dust. They then brought in thousands of soldiers and gave them buckets and sent them round picking up pieces of spent fuel in their bare hands. If you stand next to one spent fuel rod for a couple of seconds, you'll incur a lethal dose of radiation and die within weeks with vomiting, diarrhoea, your hair falling out. What happened to them? Within 2 days they developed nuclear tan. They turned brown. Their legs and arms swelled so much the skin split. Their brains became swollen. It's in a fixed box, so there's no room for swelling of the brain. They developed seizures, headaches, ataxia like a drunken person, and they died. More than 6,000 of them. They were called liquidators. They were liquidated. Yet the International Atomic Energy Agency would say that only 36 people died at Chernobyl. Another lie. A profoundly serious lie. Now, last but not least, I'm going to describe an element called plutonium, named after not the dog, but the god of hell. It was founded or discovered by a man called Glenn Seaborg, who called it the most dangerous substance known. Plutonium. It's an alpha emitter. I haven't gone into what an alpha emitter is. Read the book. It's so dangerous that less than 10 to the minus 6 grams is carcinogenic, but when they injected it into beagle dogs, they didn't find a dose low enough that didn't give all the dogs cancer, maybe 10 to the minus 9 grams. It's handled like iron by the body. It's an iron analogue, so it combines with the iron transporting protein ferritin, stored in the liver where it causes liver cancer. It causes lung cancer. It causes lymphoma because it goes to the mediastinal lymph glands. It goes to the bone because that's where hemoglobin is made, where it can cause bone cancer or leukemia. It crosses the placenta, which lets nothing through, but the placenta thinks that it's iron. It gets into the embryo, where it can kill a cell that's going to form the left half of the brain or the arm, like thalidomide did. That's called teratogenesis, damage of a genetically, chromosomally normal fetus. And it has a predilection for testicles, and it's stored right next to the cells that are the precursors of the sperm, the spermatogonia. And it irradiates them, inducing genetic mutations passed on generation to generation, when if the man gets irradiated, out the chimney goes his smoke and the plutonium to be inhaled by someone else. So you can see ad infinitum we'll get genetic abnormalities for the rest of time. Plutonium was developed by the scientists in the Manhattan Project to make the bombs. That's why they first fissioned uranium. The first bomb was called Trinity, named after the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. If the bomb didn't work, the telegram to the president was to read, "It's a girl." There's been sexism in this industry right from the start. The telegram read, "It's a boy." There was an outside possibility they didn't know, but they thought that the whole of the Earth's atmosphere could be rendered critical and the Earth could be enveloped in one nuclear explosion. They were taking bets just before the bomb exploded. And as it exploded and roiled up with the energy inside the centre of the sun, Oppenheimer, who led the Manhattan Project, muttered to himself, "I have become death, the destroyer of worlds," from the Bhagavad Gita. They knew what they'd done. The second bomb was called Little Boy. And a little boy in Hiroshima was reaching up to catch a red dragonfly on his hand against the blue of the sky, and there was a blinding flash, and he disappeared and left his shadow on the pavement. He was vaporized. And if you go to Hiroshima, in the museum is that shadow of that little boy. Never before had man learnt to vaporize his fellow human beings. A woman was running holding her baby, and she and the baby had been converted to a charcoal statue. Some people escaped Hiroshima and went to the only Christian centre in Japan thinking America would never bomb that. They arrived just in time 3 days later for the second bomb in Nagasaki. The Americans killed over 220,000 people, many vaporised. Plutonium was the fuel for the second bomb, uranium for the first. Now, plutonium has a half-life of 24,400 years, so it's around for 500,000 years. Each reactor makes 250 kilos of plutonium per year. 5 kilos is critical mass, that's all you need to make a bomb. So any country that buys your uranium and a nuclear power plant has a bomb factory. Okay? These are bomb factories, but they're carcinogenic factories too, because each year they remove 30 tonnes of radioactive waste from the reactor, and they store them in these big pools called swimming pools on racks. The cooling pools contain up to 30 times as much radiation as in the reactor itself. The cooling pools are vulnerable to terrorist attacks. Shoot one with a missile, the water leaks out, they have to be continually cooled, and you have a meltdown in a cooling pool. I debated with one guy in Chicago on public radio in 1976, and he said, "We know what to do with nuclear waste." And I said, "No, you don't." And as I got more upset, my voice got higher, like when I talked with the Minister for Energy, and he accused me of being emotional and that I got a nasty tone of voice. He did. And as he debated and got angrier, his voice lowered, so he sounded more credible. He took me out to the pub for a beer afterwards. He said, "Actually, we don't know what to do with nuclear waste." He said, "As far as I'm concerned, you can bury it in your backyard." And I said, "You are lying." And he said, "Yes. It has to be isolated from the ecosphere for 500,000 years. Of course, how can we possibly do that? We'll all be dead soon." The Department of Energy in America is employing anthropologists to work out what signs to put on top of the radioactive waste so people don't go in there. I mean, the things, and we keep making more because it's great, because it makes money. Now, you're running out of uranium, so is America, but I'll tell you what the plan is. Because you want to export your uranium, so does Australia. I've got to stop it, I don't know how, but I'm going to. And America and you don't want other countries making bombs out of the plutonium. You will re-import the radioactive waste into Canada and may go to Peace River. And what they're going to do, because there's not enough uranium left, is they'll chop the spent fuel rods apart by remote control and put them in concentrated nitric acid, H2NO3, and dissolve them. And from this witch's brew of radioactive waste is removed plutonium. Now, there are only two elements at fission that you can make bombs out of, and nuclear power, and that's plutonium and uranium-235. Okay, so we're running out of that. So they'll make the plutonium into fuel rods, and they'll pack 5 to 15 tonnes of plutonium in a reactor called a Generation 4 reactor. They're Generation 4, and this is cooled with liquid sodium. For those who are chemists, know that liquid sodium, if exposed to air, explodes or burns. So if there's a crack in a pipe, you'll get a meltdown, but you won't just get that. Because 5 kilos is critical mass, and you might have 5 to 15 tonnes of plutonium with no coolant, you're going to get a massive explosion, nuclear, which could be seen from Mars, which will scatter plutonium to the four winds when 10 to the minus 9 grams is probably carcinogenic. That's called the Global Nuclear Energy Partnership, which your Prime Minister, in his ignorance, signed without going to your Parliament with the Americans. Did you know that? We did too. And our new Prime Minister, Rudd, we thought he had potential, but he has none. What do you do with them, really? I mean, should we take them hostage and lock them in our laundries? I don't know. What are we going to do with them?